Hello, everyone. Welcome to a little bit of woo woo. I wanted to do a predictions video today that isn't about what's going on this week, but it's a little more timeless. I am recording this on 6:20 at 8:30 Pacific, 8:30-ish Pacific. And I wanted to start with an article I saw in the newspaper today. For those of you who don't know, I live in Oregon, and the nurses at the Providence chain of hospitals had to go on strike or are going on strike. And this news article that I read was a little biased. I felt like it was a little biased, and it kind of painted the nurses, in my opinion, it painted the nurses as being a little greedy. They were asking for lots of money plus new cars. That's not what they said. But they were painting the nurses as asking for more than they deserved. And I thought it was sort of interesting because intuitively, my little intuitive sense went, it's not really what's going on. So it turns out that I went to the DMV, and the person at the DMV, his sister is a nurse. And so I got an earful from him. This is a hearsay moment about what's really going on. And I certainly felt a little bit differently about the nurses because I don't know too many nurses that are greedy. So I thought that was really interesting. But what I liked about hearing this story is that I see this kind of game play out a lot in the media, and I see it play out in lots of different ways. So organizations want to try to make the individuals responsible for things that they really should be responsible for themselves. So give me an example. Let's look at recycling, for example. You're being told, or the narrative is being pushed, that you need to recycle. And if you're not recycling, if you're throwing your cans or your bottles in the trash can, you're a bad person. You are killing Mother Earth. When in reality, only about 5 to 10%, and I looked at different places trying to get the exact number, but every AI program I looked at had different numbers. So 5 to 10% of all plastics are ever recycled, regardless of whether you stuck it in the bin or not. So the onus really isn't on you as an individual. It's just certainly something that helps. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because corporations could make changes to their packaging right away that could reduce the waste, now. But they don't want to do that because it would cost some money. Instead, if we keep doing a campaign that puts it on you, makes it about you and your individual responsibility, then they are not having to take as much responsibility. And the corporations, it's almost like a campaign. And the reason I'm putting this out to you is because there's lots of ways this shows up. And I want you to start paying attention to that because you'll see it everywhere when you start seeing it. So looking at things like the insurance industry wants to say that there's so much fraud. That's the reason why insurance companies' rates are high. It has nothing to do with the bad investments that they made with the money that you paid in premiums. I'm not saying there isn't some fraud. I used to work in the insurance industry. I saw that all the time. But I can tell you that the insurance industry in general has figured out lots of ways to save money on the repairs to your Honda when you hit a tree with it. And those kinds of little shenanigans go across the board, and it's certainly a lot more of a savings than the amount they lose in the fraud. So just pay attention to that. It's also true the other way this really shows up is in the food industry. The food industry has figured out how to make a food product into a highly addictive food item. I don't want to call it food. It's like it's chow, right? It's not really food. But when they turn something, process it, and make it very addictive, then they blame you because you're just weak or you're just fat because you ate too much of it and you had some health consequences. Pay attention to that kind of stuff when you see it in the media, because you keep in mind that individual doesn't have the ability to put an ad or an advertorial, an article in a newspaper the way a corporation does and make it look like it's actually news. That's one of the reasons I personally love to see these little independent news organizations. Like I live in Ashland, Oregon, so Ashland News. Some places have the Patch. Look for those kinds of things because they're less likely to be influenced by big food, big ag, big insurance, because they're not going to lose money if they put an article critical of these organizations. I'm just saying, pay attention to that because we're seeing more and more of it. So the other thing I want to talk about, because a lot of it shows up in readings a lot, and I'm just going to tell you like it is here, jobs. There's a lot of fake jobs out here. So instead of thinking of a job as a job, I want you to think about a job that you see posted on a board is almost like dating. So it's like a dating app. You're seeing an ad. It's really shiny. It looks really good. Maybe there's not a lot of information. And then you start imagining yourself working there, and you start imagining yourself driving the new Porsche that you got because you made so much money at this job. When in reality, you don't know if this job is really real, or if it's just some fake job they put on their website to tell their shareholders that the company is doing really, really well. Look, we're hiring, right? So when people, my clients, and I'm seeing this a lot because you guys call and book appointments and ask me about jobs that you went for an interview, or maybe you applied and you've been waiting by the phone like a 14-year-old girl, right? Wanting to see where this job is. And I intuitively, when I tap in, it doesn't exist. I know it doesn't exist. I just feel it because it doesn't exist. Or maybe it exists only if you happen to be the top sales rep at the competitor's company and they're trying to poach you. And this is the way that they leave this ad up in case that person ever decides to leave. Maybe the job's available for somebody, but maybe not for you. I'm just saying, you need to start approaching job hunts like dating. You put a lot of feelers out there and you just keep going. You don't get too attached. You like the idea. Maybe you have an idea of where you want to work. That's another approach that you can do is think about a bunch of companies that you would like to work for. Maybe you've heard that they have good benefits or that they're just a good culture. And don't wait for their job board to post something. Send your resume. I have had lots of clients over the years. In fact, I even got a job this way. I've had lots of clients over the years who found a company they wanted to work for, sent their resume over, and it turned out the employer, the potential employer, received it the same day that Janie announced that she was going to have a baby and that she wasn't going to come back. And these employers, particularly ones in this small to mid-sized companies, they don't like having to interview 1,000 people. They don't want to have to sift through, 150 resumes. If somebody shows up at the right time with the right qualifications, they have a really good chance of getting hired on the spot. So be that person and do what you have to do to make this happen. So I want you to pay attention to that. I know it's disheartening. I mean, I've been there. We've all been there. It's going to be harder this time. I feel so sorry for these graduating seniors because I feel like our generation, my generation, I'm Gen X, I guess is what I am. I had a lot easier time finding a job than these kids are going to have. And I'm sorry for that. Unfortunately for me, there's not a lot of student loan debt. Some of these kids have so much student loan debt. It's just insane. So that's just my little soapbox. Don't get me started. People ask me a lot about crypto. I wish I had an answer for you. I really do. Whenever I tune into it, the energy is a little weird. It's a little swirly. I can't get a good read on it. So ask someone else. But one thing I will say, and I do get this very clearly, is that as much as we think of crypto as this alternative currency, I do feel like there's some government involvement with it, even if it's on the down low. So I wouldn't be super attached to the idea that this is really alternative and this is really something separate and outside of the system. I feel like in some ways that is part of the system. And maybe it wasn't when it first started, but I do feel a government hand in some of this. Maybe it's ours, maybe it's not ours. I don't know, but it doesn't feel quite so alternative as you might think it is. Also, if you're one of those people in the position of thinking that your job might be in jeopardy, I want you to check the laws in your state, because there are some states where if you start a business before you get laid off, you get to actually keep that business. When you get your pink slip, you can still keep it and you can still keep working at it as long as you continue to look for a job. Check the laws in your state. There may be some advantage to filing your LLC before you hear that special knock on your door from your employer letting you know that they just don't need you anymore. So the other thing I want to talk about is unemployment. Now, we've been told that nationally it's around 4%, and I think in California it's around 5%. I feel like those numbers are just way off. I mean, you talk to anyone. Do 1 in 10 of your friends have 1 in 10 of your friends gotten laid off recently? Pay attention to that, because I don't think those numbers are correct. I do see a big economic challenge coming. I've talked about that in the last video. And I do think we're going to be seeing, the number I keep intuitively seeing in my head is I feel like the number is going to be closer to 12% later. Not right now, but it'll sit at 10 for a while. And then in the worst of the economic recession, it might be like at 12%. But also keep in mind, those numbers may not necessarily get publicized, because if you've been looking for a long period of time, I bet people didn't know this. If you've been looking for a long time, after a while, the government just assumes that you've stopped trying and takes you out of the pool of people who are looking for a job. So those unemployed people numbers reflect what they're considering people who are looking, not what might actually be true. So just saying. The other thing, I left this off last video and I really wanted to talk about this. I do see, during what I see coming as some economic downturn, I do feel like we're going to be having a repeat of the great financial crisis where these big companies go hat in hand to the government and ask for too big to fail bailout. I do feel like we're going to be seeing Ford again. I do feel like we're going to be seeing Boeing again. And I was seeing Stellantis in the mix as well, even though Stellantis is not an American company. Now, Stellantis makes Jeeps. Bet you guys didn't know that's not an American company anymore. I do see them asking for the too big to fail discount, the cash machine that is the US government. It worked last time, right? I think we're going to be seeing that again. I wish it wasn't true, but I do feel like it's going to play out. I can't tell exactly if they're going to get it. They probably will. Just because that's how this game is played. but I do see that coming. I'm going to enjoy laughing on that one again when we see it, because it's going to be like 2009 all over again. The other thing I wanted to talk about is kind of that AI boom. I am not a stock planner, so don't take this as stock investment advice. And sometimes, guys, I'm wrong. But I am seeing, every time I tune into the AI thing, I feel like it's a nothing burger. It always feels like it's just a tulip war. I wouldn't be investing so much in NVIDIA. I think there's some great tools. I think at the end of the day, we're going to be using it for things like grammar check. We're going to be using it to make some fancy Pinterest pins on the cheap. But I don't see a mass amount of layoffs happening as a result of AI. I do see that a lot of companies are using it and saying, hey, look, we're innovating. We're using AI in places where it just doesn't make any sense, right? I think it's a bit of a nothing burger. That's my take on it. I hope that I'm right, because they're saying lots of people are going to get laid off. Unless you're in the business of making Pinterest posts or coming up with headlines, I just don't think that's really the case. Also, a lot of this stuff, the AI stuff, is just inaccurate. I mean, if you Google something right now, even like I did with the amount of plastics that gets recycled, you'll get 4 different answers, and you're not sure if any of them are right. So you can't use it in your bibliography. Some of the data that's being spit out is just so inaccurate, it's kind of worthless. So pay attention to that a little bit more. And the last thing I want to say on this is that just know that some of the stories we've been sent aren't entirely true. It's not all you. You're hearing things that just aren't entirely what's really playing out. I do want to talk about weather events, because I forgot to mention that last time. So I mentioned before that there were going to be some weather events. I am seeing, obviously, right now it's a real hot summer. It's going to be real hot. I do see some possibly I see like 2 earthquakes coming. I'm not being shown that it's going to be a big, massive loss of life. I'm not saying that there isn't going to be some people, some loss of life, but I'm not seeing massive loss of life. What I am seeing is that more problematic things would be the infrastructure. I'm seeing big cracks in freeways. I'm seeing lots of delays driving because you have to drive around a major artery. I'm seeing pipes that are 100 years old, should have been replaced 50 years ago. Now they have to replace them because the water's pouring out and it's creating a big sinkhole under a major freeway. I'm saying that kind of thing is what I'm seeing. The timing of it, I feel like it's kind of late in the year. And I do feel like it could be close to the end of this year. And also 2025 is when I was seeing an earthquake kind of in the Midwest area. I was also seeing a more smaller, big mess type earthquake in the California area. Obviously, hurricanes, you don't need me to tell you that hurricanes happen in Florida area all the time, but I was seeing it kind of hitting the East Coast. Feels like there's something kind of around the election time. That's what I'm seeing on that. So just take that for what it is. I'm not seeing a large loss of life, but just kind of a big mess and it hitting our economy pretty hard. So I hope this was interesting. Let me know in the comments if there's any questions you have for future versions of this. Like it, say something nice. That would be very helpful for me. Also, if I am available for private readings, just go to my website, jillkthomas.com, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Thanks for watching. Bye.